forgiven myself for taking it, but I did get through it with minimal damages. However, there came a point during our study of nutrient transport in plants at which I became terribly confused with the information, rendering me helpless against the homework that my teacher had assigned that night. Sitting in my study period that morning with my notebook open, textbook on my lap, and handouts all over my desk, I found no help in the diagrams and charts our teacher had given us. And so as time ticked away, I nervously searched for someone from my AP Bio class who might be willing to explain the diagrams to me. The only person I could find was the last person I would have liked to ask, had I had my choice. Well, I finally worked up the nerve to ask her what was meant by vascular cambium, and she spent the next 15 minutes explaining the chapter to me. I was surprised. This girl had no obligation to help me, let alone do more than say, oh, the vascular cambium is, well, I've forgotten now, but she did. I like to think that she was able to see past someone who was different from her and see a student who was in the same difficult position as all the other students in my AP class. In this way, my classmate was very much the Good Samaritan, helping when help was not expected, helping because she could. The message that lies within the parable of the Good Samaritan is simple, fundamental, and vital to Christianity. In fact, the instruction to love your neighbor as you love yourself is so basic and so often repeated that it's easy to overlook the implications of this charge. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Rather than telling us how much we must love our neighbor, Jesus tells us how we should love our neighbor, as we love ourselves. So it's pretty clear that in order to receive eternal life, we must first love ourselves. Well, then perhaps the first order of business is to discern how exactly we love ourselves. It's a difficult task, because what could be more natural than self-love? Well, the answer lies in that question. Self-love comes naturally. It's instinctive. We don't think about wanting the best for ourselves, we simply do. We strive to create better circumstances for ourselves, and even when we fail, we still possess the love to wish ourselves better. We do not have to make ourselves worthy of loving ourselves. It should be the same way regarding how we love our neighbor. Loving our neighbor should come naturally. We should instinctively want the best for others. This often takes work. It's difficult to want others to have the best, especially if it means that we ourselves are being denied the best. Too often, if we are to wish someone well, we feel a need to justify such love. A person often needs to become worthy of our love, and if someone does something to harm us, that love can be diminished. But if we are to love our neighbors as ourselves, nothing should stand in our way. When we make a mistake, we still feel a desire to make things better for ourselves. We don't stop loving ourselves, at least not completely. So it should be with our neighbor. The imperfection of the human condition should not be any reason to withhold love. We are not perfect, but each of us can still do something for God. Each of us is like a nail that gets bent when you're hammering it. You can hammer the rest of the nail against the board, and it will still perform its function of holding the wood together, flawed as it may seem. When we realize that this capacity lies within each person we see as we drive through Montclair or sit in at a movie, we are one step closer to loving our neighbor. The capacity to love that which may hurt us is a quality given to humans alone. If we do not seek to fulfill that capacity, we are ignoring our abilities as humans created in God's image. If our love ends with our own person and does not reach out to our fellow human beings, we're not honoring God's intention for his creation. The Samaritan in the parable is our example of this kind of love. The Samaritan had very few reasons to help the injured traveler. Samaritans were not treated kindly in those days, as you may know, and it would have been very easy and even understandable if the Samaritan had simply said, "You know what? Your people have not been very nice to mine, and now you need my help. Give me one good reason why I should help you." But the Samaritan was not choosy about whom he would help and whom he would not. He did not put the traveler into a category of people I like or people I don't like. He only saw another human being. And when we can put our little compartments of people aside and view humanity as a whole, we can effectively answer the teacher of the law's question, "Who is my neighbor?" Jesus' example of the Samaritan can lead us to answer, "Anyone who needs my help." But this does not mean anyone who needs my help, granted that I am willing to give it. With Jesus, there is no choice. All of humanity is our neighbor, and I can guarantee that just about everyone needs help in some form. So, though unpractical as it may seem, we must give love freely and abundantly, not limiting whom we show kindness to or how much. My AP Bio classmate didn't just answer my question, but helped me work through the entire mess of the chapter. The Samaritan didn't just drop the traveler off somewhere else to be helped, but he poured wine on his wounds and bandaged them. He put the man on his own animal and took him to an inn. And at the inn, he took care of him and instructed the innkeeper to do the same, giving him money to cover any costs the traveler's recovery might require. By acting so generously and lavishly, the Samaritan loved his neighbor as he loved himself. And now the hard part, putting it all into action. I'm sure the passing priest would have liked to help the injured traveler, but the priest was most likely on his way to temple, and touching any blood would make him unclean, and no one could enter a temple if he was unclean. And the same applies to the Levite. As a member of a tribe of priests, essentially, he was also probably temple-bound and could not help the traveler, as much pity as he might have felt. While these two in the parable may have had good intentions, they did not act on them. Unfortunately for them, action beats intention. So how do we act when trying to love our neighbor like we love ourselves? Once again, the answer is basic, the same thing that we do when we are in need, when we ourselves need help. We work until we get the assistance we need. In this same way, we must work for the improvement of others' lives, as if we were doing it for ourselves. But don't think that it will be all give and no take. Imagine if everyone were to strive to love their neighbor. We'd all be stumbling over each other to help one another, just as Christians should. I like to use an image given to me by a guest preacher during my time spent at Project Burning Bush in Virginia. He gave two images, one of heaven and one of hell. In hell, there is a great banquet with tables and tables of every kind of food imaginable, but everybody's arms are in casts to keep them from bending their elbows, so they can't get the food from their forks to their mouths, and everyone goes hungry. Now, in heaven, there is also that same great banquet with piles upon piles of great food to eat, and everyone's arms are in the same restricting cast so that they can't get the food from their fork to their mouths. But the difference is that in heaven, everyone feeds each other, because you don't need to bend your arm to reach another's mouth. If everyone's concern is for their neighbor, no one need worry about going hungry.